Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid your bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out. Really, we will.
Did you know that thousands of authors across the country have written books and published them with Page Publishing? If you've written a book, Page Publishing can help you through the process. We cut through the confusion of the publishing world to make it easy for you. If we decide to publish your book, your work ends and ours begins. From copy editing and proofing to typesetting and book cover art, we get you printed, distributed, and sold on Amazon, Apple iTunes, and in bookstores across the country. We'll even help you promote your book. That's right, we do all this for you. Biography, self-help, mystery, novels, sci-fi, even a children's book. No matter what genre, Page Publishing can bring your book to life. Call today for your free author submission kit and find out how you can be the next published author at Page Publishing.
Call for your free author submission kit at 855-993-2114. That's 855-993-2114.
Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Thursday's edition, and we're broadcasting from Irvine, California today, and the great state of Idaho. Andrew Crapuchettes, welcome back to the show, Mr. Red Balloon himself. How are you, Andrew?
I'm doing great. It's always nice to see you, Mark, and what a time to be alive. This country is, it feels like if you're in the news business as you are, there is no end of things to talk about right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. Andrew, Red Balloon has been a great sponsor of ours, and you're doing some fabulous things for what I'll call the freedom economy. But let's help our viewers out here because something's just not right, and I can't put my finger on it. We get this great unemployment report or employment report in the month of January, 353-something thousand jobs created. And yet, Andrew, your surveys will show this. A lot of people are having to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs to make it work. There's seasonality. There's survey results. Can you share with our audience what's really going on with this job market right now? And I know it's a long-winded statement, but a lot of factors going into it. Help our audience out with what's really happening in the real freedom economy.
That's right. Well, thank you, Mark. And yes, the economy, unfortunately, is not as strong as a lot of the numbers coming out of the Biden administration would lead you to believe. So I'm going to pick on one number you mentioned, 353,000 new jobs created, as the Biden administration says, in the month of January. So what does that mean, in fact? Well, if you start to look into the data, and while I don't have a PhD in economics, I play one on TV and I work with a lot of really smart economists. One of the things that we found is that the government is doing what they've always done, but they're seasonally adjusting this data. And they're doing it in such a way that unfortunately is really benefiting the government and making it look like they're doing a good job. So what happened in January actually? Well, if you look at the trend over the last several years, generally the economy sheds a lot of jobs in January, right? You have a buildup of new jobs that come in November and December to kind of deal with the Christmas rush. And then a lot of those jobs are shed off in January and into February, and then they start to build it back up through the summer. And then actually you'll see that they'll kind of shed some jobs in the summer as people move around or students end up, leaving their part-time job while they go home for the summer, and then it kind of builds back up through January. Well, generally the US economy sheds 3 million jobs in the month of January. And this is not generally over the last, 50 years. This is generally over the last several years. And so the government doesn't exactly tell you what they're using as the control point for those seasonal adjustments, but they say, look, it's usually 3 million per month in just January. And in January of this year, the economy only laid off 2.7 million people. So 2.7 million people lost their job in January, but since it was less than the 3 million that the BLS says usually leaves their job in January, the Biden administration called it a victory and said, we created 300,000 new jobs because of this little seasonal adjustment trick that they have in there. And that kind of data, when you start to dig into it, you realize, unfortunately, a lot of the data that's come out of the BLS or the BEA or the Census Bureau is being politicized a little bit more than it ever has before, where the Biden administration is pushing on this. And when we look at the Freedom Economy Index, which is a joint project of Red Balloon and Public Square, we survey 80,000 businesses. So we get this huge sample size of businesses all over the country and ask them what they are feeling so that we're not reliant on these government numbers that are maybe at least prone to some political adjustments. And lo and behold, a lot of those businesses are still feeling the pinch of inflation. They are still feeling the pinch of taxes and regulation. Almost 40% of these businesses say that 30% of their employees have to have a second job somewhere just to make ends meet. And so that's a very different story than what we're getting out of the BLS and the Biden administration right now. So you've got a couple factors here. The reason the job number looks like it's up is because of seasonal adjustment and lots of part-time jobs with these people. If you look at, again, I'm not going to economic nerd you too much, but the BEA and the BLS count jobs in very different ways. And unfortunately, we usually get the headline for the way that it makes the Biden administration look the best. And so that's one of the factors that we're feeling. These employers are still feeling the headwinds of inflation. They're still struggling to find good people. And those people are generally having to find a second job just to survive. So that's a big headline that's coming out of the Freedom Economy Index. The other one that I think is fascinating is we ask businesses, are you happy with the state you're in? Are you thinking about moving? About 50% of businesses in this freedom economy are happy with the state they're in, whatever state that is. This is nationwide. Unfortunately, if you go to the beautiful state of California, which I love California, I'm from California, only 13% of businesses say that they are happy in the state they're in. And the rest of them, over 80%, are either kind of neutral, or they're planning on leaving, they're in the middle of leaving, or they would like to leave, but they can't afford to leave. And this is going to be an interesting economic movement, because if all those businesses who are planning on leaving end up leaving every time there's a new woke legislation that comes down the pipe to these businesses, all of a sudden it makes much more sense for them to plan on a leave out of the state of California or New York or Illinois. And then as they leave, they're taking their economic activity with them, and they're taking their tax base with them. And so we're going to see this great sort continue to happen all across the country, which is really interesting. We asked the businesses why they would want to leave. And the third one's actually really fascinating to me. So the first two, taxes and an anti-business government, that's not surprising. That's taxes and regulation are a big driver of why a business would want to leave. But the third one is really interesting to me. Woke public schools. People are leaving for their kids. They're saying, I don't want to be in a place where the public school system is indoctrinating our kids in a way that is anti-business, anti-American. I thought that was the most fascinating result, is that they said, we expected people to want to leave because of taxes and regulations. We did not expect that the public school system is a big driver of sending people other places. And obviously, we've heard people talk about the state of New York, a lot of business people saying this judgment that came down on Donald Trump makes me want to never work in the state of New York again. One business leader said there are winner states and there are loser states, and New York has just proved that they are a loser state. And unfortunately, California is doing the same thing. So those are some of the big, that was a long answer to a short question, but those are some of the big trends we're seeing from the freedom economy right now.
Well, let me give you add to your analysis there. I mean, the Biden administration has been literally scratching their head saying, something's not connecting here, because we have all this great economic data, and yet Donald Trump is ahead of Joe Biden on the economic issues, folks, by 20 to 26 points. Pick your poll. I saw one poll where Trump was up 30 points on him. And I'm sitting here saying, just as a normal guy, I'm saying something is wrong here when, look, we believe in Trump's policies. Look, they worked when he was president. We had low inflation. We had low unemployment. We didn't have this massive illegal immigration surge at the border. And Andrew, I'm thinking about it. What you just explained for our viewers and listeners capsulates what the Biden administration's problem is. And let me go back to that one chart you just had. Two other things really stand out to me. Crime is another issue. Now, you hear these liberal commentators talk about, well, crime is down across the country. Not in blue states, it's not. Because what's happening is a lot of the illegal immigrants are migrating to the blue states and the blue cities, and it's exasperating the problem. Then you add in the point that the number one and number two issues in this country are the border security and illegal immigration and the economy and inflation. I mean, it's almost difficult to separate the two. And Andrew, I'm looking at that chart saying, well, let's talk about this illegal immigration thing, crime. And then there was one other thing that didn't get as big an issue. And a lot of people across the country don't realize this because gas prices have come down. Andrew, I don't know what you're paying in Idaho, but here in Southern California, it's still $5 to $5.25 a gallon. So if that price translated to the rest of the country, people literally would be freaking out right now. But in California, we just sort of take it. So here's my question to you. Tie in illegal immigration to these numbers. There's currently approximately 15 million illegal immigrants in this country, of which about 5 million to 6 million have come in under the Biden administration, which is letting in over 2 million, 2.5 million a year. That number could be low, it could be higher. So Andrew, if I'm an employer in agriculture, or I'm not trying to pick on any one industry, but if you have illegal immigrants willing to take these jobs, they're certainly not going to be counted in the government figures, or maybe they are. And how does that affect wages? It's got to drive them down, doesn't it?
It absolutely is. And this is, when we talk about all these employees that have to have a second job to make ends meet, a lot of the employers that we're talking to in this freedom economy, they're like, literally with the price of goods and services coming to my business being up substantially in the last even 30 days, let alone 12 months, I have to do something. I have to raise prices on my customers. I have to employ my employees less, or I have to close my business, because many of these businesses are not taking a big profit. It's not this, greedy business person who is struggling with that. And so they're trying to figure out how they're going to keep their business alive. And a lot of that is, look, we can't pay as much as we did before, and we're going to have to charge our customers more, which is going to hurt the flow of goods and services through the economy. Like it's just a bad deal. We did ask our businesses with the State of the Union address coming up, what should Joe Biden talk about in the State of the Union? I'm going to give you the top 10 or the top 5 here. And I think we have a chart on this. The bottom one is the Ukraine, and giving more money to Ukraine or Israel or Taiwan. Americans generally don't think about that. And even though it seems to be a headliner for everybody in DC right now to give as much money to other countries as possible, most Americans, in fact, just a couple of percent said, well, this should be covered in the State of the Union. The next one, interest rates and inflation. Only 3% of Americans who were in our survey said that they actually want Biden to talk about inflation. He's talked about it a lot. He's not doing anything about it. He's saying we're going to fix inflation, but he's not willing to do what needs to be done, which is government spending. The next one, number 3, is election integrity. All of a sudden, a lot of these businesses are saying, you know what, we need Biden to talk about why we can believe the election system. One way or the other. If you remember in 2016, the Democrats, said that it was a stolen election. People are concerned about it in 2020. We have a short memory, but both sides, whoever's lost in the past, basically starts pointing to, we're not happy with these results because we lost. And whatever you believe, and I have strong beliefs on this, but whatever you believe, Americans really need to be able to believe in the integrity of the voting system, and they want Biden to talk about that in the State of the Union. Number two, government spending and debt. This is what American businesses realize. This is the way that we actually fix inflation. We need to deal with our own fiscal responsibility at the government level, just like every small business has had to do their entire life. And if we do that, stop talking about inflation as some boogeyman out there that the Fed needs to fix. Get your own house in order, get your spending under order. And then to your point, Mark, the number one thing that our businesses want Joe Biden to talk about in the State of the Union address is border security and illegal immigration. They are sick and tired of these people coming across the border. They're concerned about the safety of their family. They're concerned about safety of fellow Americans. But if you're an employer, it is a really interesting opportunity, because if you don't have to pay the same payroll tax, the Biden administration, the Department of Labor will talk about, hey, we need to cover employee rights. We need to have safe work environments. But then they're letting in all of these illegal aliens that don't necessarily have the same protection under all of this. So it is really creating a very weird economy that's driving down wages for American workers. It is producing unsafe work environments in some instances. And it is definitely creating unsafe cities as crime is on the rise. And as we talk about California, I hate to pick on California, my home state. Crime in California is a big driver of why businesses are trying to leave. So all of these factors come together, and the Biden administration, unfortunately, looks like they're asleep at the wheel right now.
Andrew, that's a great analysis. And I'm going to tell you what, folks, we're going to break for 60 seconds. But when we come back, we're going to analyze the political implications of these policies and what the Biden administration may or may not do to fix it. Back in 60 seconds.
When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like,
rather than my skills.
I want to be judged by my political beliefs,
I want to get promoted
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up,
I want to be offended
by my coworkers and walk around the office
on eggshells
and have my words policed
by HR. Words like
grandfather,
peanut gallery, long time no see, no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety
and do workplace sensitivity training
all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder
just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist.
I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
And we're back from the best commercial on the streaming site. Andrew, and that's a great attributed to Red Balloon, by the way. Listen, I want to go through some of the political analysis here. Biden, there's rumors leaking out of the White House that Biden is going to come up with some executive action to try to stem the tide of illegal immigration coming across that southern border. Where was this a couple months ago when they were debating these bills that we were increasing border security, and the administration claimed we have no authority to do anything? Wow. A drop in the polls can lead to a 180 by the president. We've known all along he could take some executive actions. The question, Andrew, politically, he's going to tick off the far left-wing radicals in his party, the ones who open borders for everything, the ones who supports states actually paying. States in this country have earmarked $500 million just cash to give to illegal immigrants in their states. Andrew, politically, can Joe Biden get there at the State of the Union and announce that he's taking executive action to stem this tide of massive illegal immigration that all of America seems to believe is the #1 issue?
Man, that's a tough question, and unfortunately, it points to an issue that many Americans feel is politicians are, they're licking their finger and feeling which way the wind's coming, rather than doing the right thing, right? And when you say that out loud, everyone's like, oh yes, like whether you're on the right or the left, how many people are actually doing what they believe to be the right thing, as opposed to what is the politically expedient thing. The Biden administration has had the power and the ability to shut down the border. In fact, they've been fighting Texas on this, right? When we hear these stories of they are pushing back when Texas is like, fine, we're going to shut our border. We're going to do something about this. 24 states sign up to come and send state guard down to help protect the border because we see it as an opportunity. Then the Biden administration says, well, a couple of far right-wing MAGA states are doing well. When 24 states, that's half your country, and it's the states that are the most productive are actually saying, fine, we're going to step up, we're going to do what needs to be done to cover this border. And then and so the Biden administration is way too late to the game, but here they are saying that they're going to do something about it. I'll believe it when I see it. The second thing is the amount of money that is going to these illegal immigrants. There was a story in the state of New York, in the city of New York, where the mayor agreed to this grant where basically immigrants were getting up to $10,000 on a Visa card so that they could go out and buy groceries or drugs or whatever they wanted. And the contractor that the mayor selected to be able to give out all this money, they were going to get huge bonuses based on the amount of money that they gave out. So not only did they have a $250,000 management fee to be able to give out money. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good gig. I'd be happy to give out money for less than $250,000 a year. But they also were going to get massive bonuses based on the number of people that they found to give money to. Well, what does that introduce as a perverse incentive? They're going to try and find, they are now incentivized to get as many illegal immigrants these $10,000 gift cards as possible, because then they get more money. And whether those illegal immigrants are actually illegal immigrants or are they actually just friends and relatives, we don't know. So unfortunately, these are the kind of policies that are coming out of politicians today. Back to my point, they're not doing what's right. They don't have a moral standard. They're simply doing what they think is politically expedient. And so Biden is going to ostracize himself from many of the people in his party and the left if he actually comes down hard on the border. But I'll be honest, I'm a little bit cynical at this point. I think he may say something, but rhetoric is very, very different than action. And intent is very different than results. And so I think that he may talk about the border, but that doesn't mean he's going to do anything.
Yeah, I really question whether he is going to do anything because he's got his constituency on the left. Look, he's already ticked off a lot of Arab Americans with his policies on Israel. And albeit, I mean, I'm not going to get into that. That takes a long time to go through. But, he's already ticked off a certain segment of the Democratic electorate. He actually was warned by AOC today in a post that you better not do anything with the border. You're going to lose the far left wing of the party. Imagine that. AOC telling the president what to do. The question is, will he listen? And Andrew, to your point about all these goodies giving to the illegal immigrants, there are stories out there that some of these blue cities and blue states were expecting reimbursement from the federal government. And well, wait a second now. What do you mean that's not going to be coming? Now, all these promises or earmarks that have been set aside for illegal immigrants are blowing massive holes in the budgets of these cities and states. And you know how you know that you got a real problem, Andrew, is when these Democratic mayors and Democratic governors start screaming, hey, we need help on a problem the Biden administration literally created. I mean, folks, we can't make this stuff up. Andrew, what am I missing here? Is it really, I mean, as cynical as I can be a cynic at times. Is it really that bad?
It really is. And these states are in a bad spot economically. I mean, we talk about this migration, the big sort that's happening all over the country, and people leaving California and going to Texas and Florida or Idaho. Well, what's interesting is, again, they're going to bring economic activity with them. And what the Democrats don't realize is when you drive out the most productive, hardworking, revenue-generating people in your economy and in your society, lo and behold, you can't balance your budget. It was, the latest tax data, and I think we've talked about this here on the show before, the latest tax data shows $19 billion of taxable income leaving the state of New York in just 1 year. Well, what's that going to do to the budget? And then the people moving into the state of New York in that same year, on average, were earning $30,000 a year less than the people who are leaving the state. So people are coming for handouts. The people who are tired of funding all those handouts are then out of here. That is going to cause these states to implode on themselves. And so it's going to be really interesting to see if the left starts to devour its own, because when you can't pay the bills, when you can't make payroll because the federal government doesn't want to support your wild leftist ideas, that's going to either cause people to change, or those cities are going to change dramatically. Not only on the crime front, but all of a sudden they simply won't be able to make payroll for the police department. I mean, think about that. And I know this sounds, extremist or draconian, but at some point, the city of New York will not be able to make payroll because they simply won't have any more money, and they won't have any more credit because no one will give them money. Well, what happens at that point? It's not going to be pretty.
Boy, that you're taking us back into what, the 1970s, when David Dinkins or somebody, when New York actually went broke one time previously. Andrew,
That's right.
maybe that's why the state of California. Here's another thing that's sort of perplexing to me. State of California, the home of artificial intelligence, the home of Nvidia, a stock that's up $100 a share today, powering the NASDAQ to record highs, powering the S&P 500 to hitting an all-time high. I mean, Nvidia's earnings came out, they were fabulous. The state of California, home to Silicon Valley, the tech capital of the world, I mean, should be prospering. How in the world can all these great things be happening in the state of California, and yet the budget deficit in the state is ballooning now to $73 billion? That is not a good read for Governor Gavin Newsom. Is it more the same, Andrew, where they're just masking these costs and more illegal immigrants are coming in, increasing the cost? And is that why the state budget is being blown to the level it is with all the great technology here?
Well, I mean, we all know someone who got a huge, massive raise in their just personal life, in their personal job, and then they went and increased their expenses more than that raise. And lo and behold, they started putting things on credit cards, which is actually a problem in America today. But they started taking on debt to be able to justify their lifestyle. And the problem is that's what California has done. California has a huge amount of economic activity that happens there. AI, the Bay Area, but also you look down at Hollywood, you look at the massive earners down in Hollywood and the movie stars down there, San Diego with the biotech that they are pushing and all the great businesses there, all across the state. Even like the farm community in California is a very productive state, should be a productive state, but we all know you can always spend more than you have, no matter how much you have. And it's simply fiscal responsibility. It is so easy to borrow from future generations. It's so easy to just try and take more money from taxpayers to be able to do the things you want. I mean, what business wouldn't want to have a group of customers that had no choice but to be customers in the state? Gavin Newsom's even said, hey, anybody who leaves the state, we're going to continue to tax your income in your future state for the following 10 years if you leave, trying to motivate people that we're going to get you no matter what, which is illegal as a side note. But that's what's happened in California. They have policies and they have a lack of fiscal responsibility that's finally catching up with them. And the more they do this, they think, oh, well, let's just raise taxes and that'll fix the problem, which will drive out more businesses that are productive members of society down in California. And you start to do this, and it is not a pretty cycle, because the more you raise taxes, the more you drive out businesses, the less the tax revenue comes in. There was a great economist, Art Laffer, and he had the Laffer curve, and he basically showed that there is an optimal amount of taxes that you should be charging, and anything above that, your tax revenue will actually go down, even though you've raised your tax rate, because people will change behavior, they will change location, and they will live in another place. And California, unfortunately, is eating their own cooking. Their economic policies are broken.
Andrew, your analysis, as always, is spot on. Folks, we're about out of time. But Andrew, great job with Red Balloon. Great analysis today. And I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you. Folks, we'll talk on Tuesday about what the implications are with Donald Trump, why he is leading Joe Biden by 3 to 5 points. Have a great weekend coming up, and we will see you on Tuesday.